Hi, this is Dr. Graham at Graham Family Dental Lab. Today we're going to be mounting a case on an articulator. This is my first instructional video. Please understand that and take it easy on me. Also, if you're using this video outside of my personal staff training, please understand I do not take responsibility for the use or misuse of this video. Use at your own risk. Thanks. Remember, this video is taken in real time. Any video editing effects are just your imagination. Hope you enjoy. As you can see here, we have a few things which are necessary. We've got our articulator. We also have the FACEBO record with the bite registration. We also have our trimmed mandibular and maxillary models and the top of the articulator with pin here. We'll also be needing our scalpel. We'll be needing a plaster mixing bowl, beaver tail spatula, and plaster, of course. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be taking this FACEBO record off the articulator. What I'm going to do is trim this model so that my maxillary model can more easily sit completely into the bite registration. Alright, I'm going to give this a try recording from this angle here. As I'm trimming, I want to make sure that I'm not changing the angle of this piece, either rotating this direction or rotating this direction, okay? So I'm not going to be holding on to this piece right here. This is one solid bar of metal here, so it's perfectly safe for me to apply pressure to this bar. Okay, I don't want to touch this one at all. So as I'm carving, I want to make sure that I leave these indentations. I'm going to try to carve off everything else that's sticking up that may be causing interference as the model sits. So I don't know, I'm going to try to get this all on camera. I don't know how well I'm going to do on that. I'm definitely going to take priority over not cutting myself, as this is a new blade and will cut quite readily, over trying to get this perfectly on camera. I'll make sure that we get a nice image of it once I'm done carving. So again, as I'm carving, I'm basically trying to maintain the very cusp tips in this bite impression, or the impressions made from the cusp tips, I guess I should say. Everything else we want to go. I also want to make sure I don't carve it so thin that it breaks right off of the bite fork. So you can already see I'm carving away quite a bit of material here. There is a bit of difference between these two sides already. I'm not done yet. Personally, I find it easier to carve multiple thin layers, as if I try to carve a layer that's too thick, the bite registration tends to fracture, which we don't want. Here's our carved bite registration. As you can see here in the maxillary, I've only left indentation for cusp tips, and that's really it. That way, when we seat this model, there shouldn't be any kind of interference in between teeth. For it to sit completely, there should be minimal rocking, preferably zero rocking. If there's if there's noticeable rocking, probably means either the bite registration is incorrect, the impression was not taken appropriately, or it wasn't poured up appropriately, which is totally possible, or it means that we still have some sort of interference in the bite registration. So this one seems to be fairly stable. I'm not getting any rocking, so not too worried about it. Sometimes we will need a separate bite registration so that when we actually mount the mandibular to the maxillary, we have a way of verifying that the way that we actually articulate the two models is correct. Most of the time that's not necessary. As you can see right here, I can hand articulate this without any problems. This is where the patient's bite is. 99.999, however many times you want to put in there, % sure. Every once in a while we will get a patient that we ask them, bite down like normal, and they ask us, well, which bite do you mean? Or they don't necessarily know what their normal bite is. That's something where we have to have a separate bite registration. That way we can articulate. Also, if the patient is missing a number of teeth, having a separate bite registration is mandatory. For those patients that have only the anterior teeth, we don't have a way of hand articulating it and knowing if we have it correct. But this patient does have all of their teeth. They're not severe bruxers, so hand articulation, super easy. Okay, so I'm going to pause here and just clean things up on the countertop a bit. I've got quite a few shavings, and I want to try to get that kind of out of the way. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put the bite registration back in place. All right, so here it is. And we're going to put that back in as well. Now, at this point, maxillary model should just fit right into those cusp tips. And honestly, I think I'm going to get a new articulator because I seem to have just a little bit of wiggle here in my post, which I really shouldn't have. That definitely causes some uncertainty as to the bite registration and the validity of it, but we'll have to come back and fix that some other time. This is the articulators I have at this time. That I inherited from the previous dentist at this practice. Ted, I gotta say, these articulators, not super happy with them. Anyways, so let's get to actually mounting the models. Now, we've previously trimmed the maxillary model. This is not going to be made into a denture or anything, so I haven't worried about having the depth of the vestibular sulcus intact. Basically, I just had it trimmed as small as possible without damaging the teeth. Also gave us a nice flat base. As you can see, there's also some impressions that were put into the base with just a round burr, lab burr. This is because we're going to be removing this from the mounting and then returning it to the mounting a little bit later, because what I'm going to be doing with this is creating a articulating appliance. It's not articulating appliance, excuse me, a occlusal appliance. And so for that, I'm going to actually have to take this model off and then put it back on. So I definitely need to have a record of exactly where this was on the mounting. All right. So like I said earlier, this is fitting in real nicely. There is minimal to no rocking, which is fantastic. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to mix up some plaster, and I'm going to be placing some plaster here on the surface, also on this. So hold on for a second while I mix up some plaster in my little mixing bowl. Really shouldn't need anything fancy for this. I mean, if you've mixed plaster before, you should know how to do this. As I love pointing out to people, you know your mixture is correct if you can turn your bowl upside down and nothing falls out. Okay, so I've got our articulator with the mounting plate on it, both top and bottom. I got my plaster and water here. I'm going to go ahead and hand mix that. And I'm going to make it a little bit thin. If you make it a little too thick, as you try to place your model on, you will actually, if it's too thick, it will force the basebow record out of position, which we don't want. Now, you know, I did say a little bit thinner. I do mean just a little bit. You should be able to still flip your bowl over upside down and not have anything fall out. I just need a little bit more stone here, it looks like. There we go. That is the nice thing about having pre-mixed packages, is there's, you know, no guesswork. But with a little bit of experience, you really don't need to have that security blanket. So anyways, like I said, nothing fell out. I'm going to place and flow some stone onto my model. Okay, I'm just kind of tapping it to allow it to flow. Let's put some on the maxillary mounting plate as well. Again, just kind of tapping it, let it flow into the grooves, and let's stack it up a little bit on the model. And we're going to put this in place. Make sure the pin is set to 0. Okay, I almost have exactly the amount I need. Not quite. I'm going to add a little bit more. All right, here we go. There. And I'm just going to use my finger here to just kind of get those folds to blend together. That way when it sets, I know everything, it's not going to separate. Everything is bonded together. Okay, so there we go. Should be able to, holding it closed, flip this over, upside down, and take the bite registration off. Alright, now that I've done that, looks like my stone may have set up a little too much to add any more. Let's see. We still got a little bit malleability here. I'm just going to tap it in place, fill in the thin areas, just because I like it thick. A nice thick base or mounting column. I am not going to go up around the sides of the model because I am going to need to separate this model later. No, I'm not doing crowns. Going to be doing an occlusal appliance. Alright. Nice, thick connection column there. Okay. Alright, we're going to wait for this to set. Once it does, we'll actually be able to use hand articulation on this case to mount the mandibular model. The mandibular model, I'm not going to bother with putting anything in the bottom. I'm not going to be taking it off mounting until we're ready to completely take it off. It will never go back on to mounting again after that. So I'm not going to worry about making any kind of landmarks here. But we're basically going to just mount it right here. And because I'm using fast set stone, this is already pretty much set here. It's hard enough. I mean, if I use a thumbnail, yes, I can still score it and chip it, but you know, as far as being able to apply a little bit of pressure, a little light pressure, not a problem here. So I'm going to go ahead and mount the mandibular model. Mounting the mandibular model, you're going to do this upside down. Okay. Again, like I said, you want to double check, make sure your pin is still set to 0 here. All right. So we've got our mounting plate right here. And as I pointed out earlier, the hand articulating this is not an issue at all. This is the patient's bite. I mean, unless they're, you know, intentionally doing something strange with their bite to posture their bite in a strange position, this is their MI position. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with the mandibular model. I'm going to pause this while I go get some more stone. Okay, Wyatt, I haven't gotten more stone yet, but I did get the water for the stone. I'm going to go ahead and just eyeball it. Adding some fast set right now. There we go. Alright, so I've got enough powder here. Now I've made this thick enough this time that I'm really going to have to move fast, so I'm probably not going to be talking a whole lot here. But I'm going to do essentially the same thing as I did with the maxillary. Super important, the maxillary comes first. Please don't make the mistake of trying to do the mandibular first. It doesn't work. Okay, so I've added my stone. Let's go ahead and flip this over. Oh, I'm gonna have to add it more to the front. So let's just shift it a little bit. There we go. And there we go. Just gonna start tapping it, make the margins of these blend together. And as I do that, I want to make sure I hold my mandibular model in place because I don't want it shifting from my tapping. Same with the articulator itself. I don't want that shifting either. Okay, looks like I've got an initial record here. I'm just going to let it set for a couple of minutes and going to go ahead and clean out my bowl while it's still relatively wet. Alright, let's check this here. Yeah, it looks like it's pretty much set. The maxillary model should definitely be set in place. So there we go. We've got mounting. So it's not pretty. I haven't cleaned it up or anything, but we do have full mounting on both maxillary and mandibular.